So me and my husband, who I'll call Jake for this story, have been together for 5 years and married for 3. We have recently started trying for a baby as we both felt like that was the next step in our life together. And 3 weeks ago I got a positive test back. We were really happy and told our families, and now my mom and mother-in-law want to throw a big baby shower for us. It was just super good news all around. Well, 2 nights ago me and Jake were getting ready for bed when he reminds me to go through the house and make sure all the lights are off. Now he can be a little lazy at times. And it has become a nightly routine for me to make sure all the lights are off that he leaves on before we go to bed. I wasn't feeling very well and asked if he could just do it since he wasn't doing anything and was literally standing by the door. He then tells me, "No, this is what is expected of you every night." I was a little hurt, but I didn't want to fight with him, so I just did it. When I came back, Jake goes on this very long and unprovoked rant saying things like, "Just because you are pregnant does not mean anything will change, and you are still expected to cook, clean, and do all the chores every day because how can you be expected to be a mother if you can't handle a little work?" He wasn't yelling or anything, he was talking to me quietly like I was 2 inches tall. I was shocked because I had never heard him say anything like this. The rant went on for about 30 minutes before I interjected and asked, "Well, what do you plan on doing to help me with all of this?" He then got extremely defensive, saying he works his ass off at his job to provide for me and what is going to be our future children. For context, I don't work ATM, my job was not paying enough to justify me going, so I am a full-time college student. He ended by saying that it doesn't matter how I feel physically or mentally, it is a mother's job to push through. And if he helped and babied me, I wouldn't be a good mother. I got extremely upset and started yelling, and I said that, "I wish I would have known this is how you felt before I got pregnant with your baby." There was a moment of silence before he started crying and he left for the night to stay at his mother's house. He hasn't been back yet, and my mother-in-law and sister-in-law have called me berating me and saying I broke Jake's heart with what I said, and I need to apologize immediately, and until I do he isn't coming home. I don't know how to feel. So for yelling at my husband after he said he isn't helping me with anything during the pregnancy because it's a mother's job to deal with it? Okay. I am getting some things together and am going to be headed to my mom and dad's house. My mom is furious with him and doesn't want me apologizing to him or talking to him without the situation either being recorded or having a witness. I am currently divorced from my ex Thomas of 30 years. We ended up seeing a lawyer to help with dividing stuff. Everything was pretty much wrapped up till he said he no longer wanted any part of our kids' lives. I didn't argue with him about it since I already know what it's like having a parent who doesn't want you around, or wants to be in your life. I asked what he wanted me to tell the kids and he just said, "Whatever you think is best, I don't care. I don't want to parent anymore." Everything was in agreement and signed with no fuss. A few weeks later I get a call from my ex-mill asking if we could meet each other. When I came over she broke down crying and begging to let my ex see his kids again. I was confused about what she meant because not once did he contact me after meeting the lawyer. She went on about how my ex said he really missed them and that I was just a petty B*TCH for taking full custody. Also that he was crying for days about it. I told her my version of events and she called it BS, saying her son wouldn't lie like that, especially not about his kids. Then I decided to call him in front of her. He didn't know she and I were meeting that day. I said, "Hey, has a soccer game in a few days," which he did, and I was wondering if you wanted to go? I know he'd really love it and be happy to see you. He instantly said no. I already said I'm not doing this anymore. I asked, "Well, how do you think this is going to affect Denise, his mom?" She is over the moon about them. He just said she loves me more than the kids, so I doubt this will be an issue for her. After a bit more talking we finally hung up. Ex-Mill was straight-faced and nodded at everything that just happened. She asked me to leave and said we would be in touch. Later that day I got a call from my ex saying how it's my fault he was kicked out of his mom's house, and possibly will be taken off her will. Also that none of his family members will talk to him because of what ex-Mill heard. He threw a lot of insults at me before I hung up, and now him and his mates keep calling and texting me. My friend is saying I shouldn't have said anything in the first place and I ruined his life. Yes, I plan to let Denise see the kids because I know she just wants to give them the world along with the rest of his family. My sister-in-law and I have an agreement. She watches my kids 3 days a week, and I watch hers 3 days a week. This agreement has stood since March 2020 without issues. Any changes have been discussed weeks in advance. A couple weeks ago, we had an argument. The next day, I brought my kids to her house, dropped them off, and left. I didn't speak to my sister-in-law, because when one of us is in a rush, like I was, it's standard for us to just let the kids out, stay in the car, and drive off when you see the door open. I drove to work, about 40 minutes away. When I got there, I had about 20 missed calls, and even more texts, all from my sister-in-law, all saying she didn't want to watch the kids given our argument. Her first text arrived a little before I got to her place, but I didn't see it until I got to work because my phone is always on silent when I drive. I rang her, said I'll arrange to work from home, then come get the kids. She said I have 45 minutes to get back to her place or she would call the police. I told my supervisor the situation, and she said I could leave after I did a few things. This delayed me 20 minutes. When I got back to my sister-in-law's, just over an hour later, she said she'd already called the police when the 45 minutes ran out. I then had to stick around long enough to tell the officer that I didn't abandon my children, there was just a communication issue. Sister-in-law and I had another shouting match later over this. I arranged other childcare for my kids and I've been mostly ignoring her since. However, she reached out and apologized, and has asked if I'd be willing to go back to the old childcare arrangement. I work with kids. If I got child abandonment on my record, I would never work in my field again, which she knew. And her calling the police was a massive overreaction, so if she needs a babysitter she can go whistle for all I care. She said that if I checked my phone, talked to her that morning, or came back when I was supposed to, she would not have needed to call the police, and I did this to myself. As she gave me a warning with that first text, and I could have checked my phone or spoken to her directly when I got to her place. All of which she says she would have done if she were in my position, given that we'd argued the night before. I've told her that if she thinks I'm babysitting for her, she's delusional, and she's on her own. Because of my refusal, it's looking like she may have to quit her job because my brother and her would pay more for a babysitter than they would earn from her working. My mother and brother have both called me an arsehole because there were no consequences to her calling the police, and that while she overreacted, she's apologized, so if I really forgive her, I'll let us move on. This income loss would also mean that she, my brother, and my niece and nephew might need to move somewhere cheaper. That my brother might have to take on extra hours at work. And in an extreme scenario they may even be completely unable to live independently, meaning they'd have to move in with her parents, who live several hours away. He's a fashion photographer, meaning he works alongside many beautiful women in his profession. Stylists, hair and makeup artists, and of course, models. This is actually how we met. I modeled my way through college and he photographed me, after which we became friends and eventually started dating. We have been together now for almost 3 years. I've since stopped modeling, but he is still a photographer. Never once in our relationship has he given me any reason to question his fidelity. With the exception of me, he has never dated or even befriended any of the models he has photographed. That was, until Rachel came into the picture. I've met Rachel. She seems like a fun chick, the type of girl who draws a lot of positive attention just by entering a room. She's beautiful, but her personality really shines through. She makes you feel like you're her best friend when you're talking to her. A very cool person through and through. That said, I'm not the only one who feels this way. My boyfriend also adores Rachel. The first time he photographed her, he stayed late at the studio and discussed ideas for their next shoot for nearly 3 hours. He was actually late for a night out with me because of it. But he's always had terrible time management, so I didn't think anything of it. The lateness has now become a steady, recurring factor in their shoots together. They hang out long after the stylists and makeup artists leave the studio. They also text a lot, and he's always smiling to himself and laughing when he reads the messages she sends him. At first he would show them to me and try to include me in on all the fun, without me asking. But he abruptly stopped doing that around 2 weeks ago. He tilts his phone away from me now when Rachel messages him. I'm not the jealous type, but if my BF had a history of doing this with the other models, I'd let it slide. The fact that he is only like this with Rachel and me, I suppose, makes me wary of what might have transpired between them. Rachel herself has stopped talking to me. We used to communicate and have an easy, casual friendship via IG and Snapchat, but she pretty much ignores me now. Guilty conscience? I don't know. The real kicker is, my boyfriend now has a photo of Rachel as the wallpaper on his phone. He's apparently proud of the concept and the editing, and claims it has nothing to do with Rachel herself. Which is totally believable, but doesn't sit right with me. I told him that and he told me I was being irrational. Rachel is single, by the way. She and her BF broke up around 3 weeks ago. I really don't want to fall into the jealous GF trope, but what else am I to think? I don't want to make crazy demands and accuse my BF of cheating on me. Even emotionally, but he really does seem to be fond of this girl in a way that really hurts me. He has other female friends and he doesn't act that way with them. He's capable of being friendly with a girl without flirting or acting suspicious, but with Rachel it's different. He has slowly become very attached to her and I feel like I'm losing him. I have expressed this to him a couple of times, but he always tells me I have nothing to worry about and that he and Rachel are just kindred when it comes to photography. The long nights, constant texting, and phone wallpaper mean nothing. Oh, by the way, she's practically naked in the photo and it wasn't taken for any sort of publication, just for fun. Am I being irrational? Unreasonable? How would you feel in this situation? What would you do? Update. My photographer boyfriend has been growing very close to one of his models, and acting dismissive of my concerns regarding their work relationship. He has a practically naked photo of her as his phone wallpaper. WTF am I supposed to think? He and I are meeting for lunch in an hour. He confessed. I'm kind of a mess right now, but I'm lucky enough to have an amazing support system and a clear head. That's all I really wanted out of this unfortunate situation. My boyfriend, sorry, ex-boyfriend, has never taken nude or even partially nude photos of me. Although I modeled in high school and university, my primary focus has always been stage acting. He took my headshots. That's how we met. Not that it really changes anything. Just a bit of insight, I guess. When we were younger and when the relationship was newer, I would accompany him to his shoots all the time. But my own career is very time-consuming nowadays. I know of multiple model/photographer relationships where they accompany each other to every shoot. And I've nothing against doing that, but I personally would rather just trust that my SO is on their best behavior. Obviously what happened here kind of squashes that, but I stand by it. If I have to be there in order to make sure my SO faithful, chances are they'll find other ways to cheat. Okay, now for the good stuff, or I guess, the bad stuff. I met him for lunch Friday afternoon. We went to our favorite sushi joint overlooking the ocean, and I ordered more than I could handle, stuffing my face while trying to decide how to broach the topic of Rachel, but most importantly, our relationship. I went into that meeting with a righteous, ass-kicking speech prepared, but I forgot every word of it almost immediately after we sat down. I guess he could tell there was something on my mind, because he asked me if I was all right, if he had done anything to upset me. Snorts. Yes, Ian, you've upset me very much, actually. As soon as I gathered the confidence to look him in the eyes, I point blank asked him, "What's going on between you and Rachel?" His mouth flew open as if he were completely and utterly taken aback by the implication, but I cut him off with, "Do not bullshit me." I tried my best not to let anger get the best of me, I really did. I wanted to stay cool, calm, and collected like so many women on this sub. You know the ones. Those intense stories of cheating husbands wherein the wife takes to relationships, garners a ton of support, and then updates us later with a well-constructed storybook post detailing the evidence she has collected against him and the meeting she had with her uncle or sibling, who just so happens to be a divorce lawyer. Yeah, I'm not a badass like that. I wish I were. But I'm honestly just an overly emotional doormat, and I knew going into this meeting that I was either going to cry or gouge his eyes out with my mind. Because I had somewhere to be later, I took a hard left and got super angry. He could see it in me, the anger bubbling over. The people in the restaurant were starting to stare at us, too. In order to save face, I threw money on the table, with tip, and told him to meet me in the parking lot. If I'd had a switchblade on me, I can't say for certain I wouldn't have channeled my inner Jet and beat his to the pavement. Kidding. Totally kidding. We met inside my car. He climbed in after me, his head down as though he were ashamed or, I don't know, guilty? I asked him how, and he explained everything to me. No preamble whatsoever. The moment he met Rachel, he felt some type of way towards her. He couldn't tell whether it was just a silly crush or something more, but he knew she felt it, too. How cute. They kissed the first night they met. The night he nearly stood me up. They had crazy, emotional, forbidden intimate the night she and her boyfriend called it quits. And they've been ever since. He mentioned he has always used a condom with her, but I don't care. I'm getting tested. I should mention Rachel was the one who was broken up with in her previous relationship. I don't know why or how. I didn't ask and I don't care to know. Funnily enough, Ian said he doesn't want to be with Rachel, he wants to be with me. And he even provided text messages to show that he's the one who decided not to pursue anything with her on official grounds. But I told him I give zero about what he wants. And unless he can go W//O his eyes, he should get the out of my car and erase me from his mind before I erase him. I literally said that. In any case, I went home later that day and drank a lot. My friends and family, and most of Ian's friends and family, have rallied around me in support. I guess he told his mother we broke up and how it happened, because she called me this morning and said she's disgusted with her son and that if I need anything at all, she's always there for me. For real, I'm going to miss his family. They're good people. The best people. This is my first adult breakup, by the way. The type of breakup where you're required not only to break up with your so but with their family and friends, as well. These people you've spent so much time getting to know and growing to love, are suddenly not in your life anymore and it's, well, it's kind of daunting, really. Daunting and sad and infuriating all at the same time. So, that's the conclusion to this story. That's what happened. P.S. He admitted to cheating with Rachel and then I dumped his. So far, his mother, his teenaged stepbrother, and 2 male friends of his, have reached out to me saying how disgusted, ashamed and embarrassed they are on his behalf. On top of 3 mutual friends. It hasn't been 2 days yet.